Hi there, my name's Andrew with the American Heritage Museum, and today I'll be taking you for a walk around our German Pak 40. The 7.5cm Panzerabwehrkanone, or anti-tank gun 40, is a German 75mm towed anti-tank gun introduced in 1942. Now, as soon as the Pak 40 was introduced, it became an integral part of the German military, going everywhere from North Africa and Italy to the Eastern and Western fronts, so pretty much everywhere the German military was as of 1943. This design was also adapted into other variants, like the KWK-40L48, as seen in late variants of the Sturmgeschütz III, like this one. Let's start things off up here at the front. The Pak 40 uses an 11-foot, 4-inch, or 3.45-meter barrel that can elevate to 22 degrees and depress by -5 degrees. The muzzle brake up here at the front uses a pretty standard double baffle design to help mitigate recoil and also helps to reduce the dust kicked up by firing. Just behind the muzzle brake here, we have 4 kill rings painted on the barrel. Now, some crews during World War II would keep track of the number of tanks they've destroyed and paint kill rings on their barrel to reflect that number. Now, this wasn't a standard practice, and not all crews did this. So if you see a gun with no kill rings, that could either mean that the crew just doesn't bother keeping track of them, or alternatively, the gunner is just a terrible shot. Moving back towards the base of the barrel, we have the guide rail as well as the recoil absorption system. The Pak 40 uses a hydropneumatic recoil system, which is housed under the barrel here and is protected by this steel cap. Found just beneath the recoil system, we have this small armor plate bolted onto the elevation drive, as well as the elevation drive itself. Moving down below the gun, we have the lower gun shield. This is made up of 2 steel plates with hinges running down the center. On the lower plate here, we have the brackets for mounting a shovel, and on the upper plate, we have a tail light. Now, these guns were of course designed to be towed behind a vehicle on the road, so standard trailer rules do apply. On the topic of towing, the lower plate uses those hinges that we talked about before to fold up and latch in, folded up out of the way. This is done so that when you are towing the gun, you don't drag this armor plate along the ground. Now for the main gun shield. This is made up of 3 main angles and has a penetration here on the gunner's side for the optic. Also worth noting is that this armor is spaced. It uses 2 sheets of 3/8-inch steel spaced by about 1 inch. Now, this is done to help prevent small arms fire and shrapnel from hitting the crew, as if a projectile makes it through the first plate, it'll lose velocity and tumble before hitting the second plate, likely being stopped there. Now, this is only useful against small caliber rounds and shrapnel, as larger rounds are more liable to just pass through. Interestingly, the studs used to mount the front plate actually have these holes drilled through them. Now, in period photos, you often see wire wrapped through those holes used to attach camouflage to the front of the gun. On either side of the carriage here, we have the wheels. These use steel spokes and rims with a solid rubber tire around the outside. Also, found on the hubs, we have a lifting eye, which swivels around to point upwards. Getting back behind the gun shield now, this is where we'll find most of the interesting stuff. One of the first things we'll notice are these long legs coming off the rear of the carriage. This is what's known as a split trail design. So part of the setup process for this gun is deploying these legs, which we'll go over shortly. The Pak 40 normally had a crew of about 5, but could make do with less if need be. Generally, you at least want to have a commander to spot targets and give the crew directions, a gunner to aim and fire the cannon, and a loader to load the gun. Any extra crew members would generally help with handling ammunition, as the rounds are fairly large, and the more people you have, the easier loading becomes, and the more efficient the crew can be. Let's start here on the gunner's side. Now, the gunner is positioned here to the left of the breech, and in front of us we have the elevation hand wheel down here on the left. This also has the firing button built into it, and we have the traverse handle on the lower right. Now, like I mentioned before, the gun can elevate to 22 degrees and depress to -5 degrees. And in terms of traverse, we get 65 degrees total, which overall gives us a pretty solid field of fire. Above the hand wheels, we have the gunner's telescopic sight. Now, inside of there, we have the standard German chevron-style crosshair used for aiming, and to the left and right of that, we have smaller chevrons, which are used to help gauge distance when leading a target. Now, to adjust the sights, on the right side of the mount here, we have a knob used to adjust the elevation, and below the mount, we have this handle used to adjust the windage, which is really a neat system for making adjustments on the fly, and I would imagine would be rather useful in combat. Another thing that we can see now that we're behind the gun shield are the controls for opening and closing the penetration in the armor for the gunner's optic. Now this uses two plates of armor steel, one on the bottom and one on the top, that can be moved into place to close up that penetration completely. Now on the optical topic, you can remove the telescopic sight and replace it with this thing. Now, I don't know if this is a wartime invention or if this was made up by a previous owner, but either way, it uses the same mounting as the telescope and fits right in its place. Now, this is really just a little rifle barrel with no bore and standard rifle iron sights. So if this is original, it could have just been used as a backup sight for the telescope should it fail for whatever reason, but really whatever its origin is, I just like it because it's silly and it's fun. So I'm just happy that it exists. Now, the firing mechanism for the gun is interesting and very German. Under this cover here, there's a whole mechanism that isn't quite in the right position right now, but I'm going to do my best to visually reconstruct it on screen for you as to the way it should be, and hopefully it'll all kind of make sense. Now, the cable over here on the left is too short as of right now, but if that cable were longer, I could move the arm here so that this tooth would sit under this plunger. So for demonstration's sake, let's pretend that all the pieces are in the right positions and everything is in working order. So, to fire the cannon, you smack the big red fire button on the elevation handle, which pulls the cable inside of this shroud, which pulls a lever, which pushes a plunger, which pushes another plunger, which turns a lever, releasing the firing pin, and firing the gun. Also found on the gunner side, we have a storage tube, likely for the gunner's optic, as well as a couple mounts up top here. Now, I still have yet to get my hands on a complete Pak 40 manual, so if you happen to know of one that exists out there, please let me know down in the comments, because I'd really like to get my hands on one. But, with that in mind, my best guess for these mounts is that they would be for an indirect fire sight and potentially a backup sight like this thing. I love this thing. Moving over to the loader's side now, we have a few different things to look at. Firstly, we have the barrel cleaning brush and its storage tube, as well as the mounting points for a couple different tools and accessories, which unfortunately are missing on this example. And then, up here, we have a couple data plates, which, if I'm reading them correctly, tell us that the gun was built in 1943, and that it was rehabbed sometime after the war. Below the gun here, we have a ruler that says, "Attention, cease fire," in German. Now, as best I can tell, this is a safety measure which helps to tell you if your recoil system is getting worn out. If the breech does not return to at least the second to last mark, then your recoil system is failing and you need to stop firing, lest you break your gun. On top of the breech here, we have the manual breech operating handle, as well as what appears to be the extractor releasing lever. Now, I really wish I could go into more detail on all these systems, but without a manual, I don't want to just go making claims that I can't back up. If I do get my hands on that manual, though, you can bet your sweet bippy I'll be coming back to this. The last thing we have to look at up here by the gun is this rectangular storage box at the front of the gun shield, which has a strange wooden fixture in it that I'm not quite sure what it's for, but it is there. Now it's on to the legs. First, I'm going to show you all the pieces and parts that go into them, then I'm going to show you how it all works. Starting up here by the carriage, we have the hinges for the legs, as well as the pins used to lock them in the open position. Now, this whole system is just mirrored on each side. Moving back, we have the elevation lock for the cannon on this arm, which doubles as one of the two locks holding the legs in the closed position. Along each leg, we have the mounting points for 3 barrel cleaning rods. Now, we still have one of them, but the other 2 have absconded. Further back, we have the feet, lifting handles, and second closed position lock. Now, these feet are shaped this way to help hold the gun in place while firing. Once you fire a round or two, these are driven down into the ground by the force of the recoil and help to stabilize the gun while in use. If you should find yourself on ground that's too hard, though, say a densely compacted dirt road, you may find yourself like one of these 2 fools trying to hold the gun down with your own body weight. Although that may have just been a hazing thing too, I'm not really sure. And lastly, we have the toe point connected to the right-hand leg. Now, the Pak 40 weighs in at 3,150 pounds, or 1,425 kilos, meaning that to move it at any appreciable speed, it has to be towed by a vehicle like the SDKFZ 251, a dedicated artillery tractor like the Hausstreppen Ost, or something like the SDKFZ 10, like this one here. With all the physical components covered, let's go over operation of the gun with some help from Matthew and Finn. Let's assume we've just arrived at the position we want to set up the gun, maybe overlooking a key crossroad or bridge. Firstly, we need to deploy the legs. To do this, we first unfold the lifting handles and lock them in place. Next, we remove the travel lock. Now, we can unlock the legs both under the breech and at the rear. Now we unfold the legs. This is made a little difficult being in the diorama here, but you can imagine it would go a little smoother out in the open. The legs automatically lock in place once they're fully open, with those pins at the front dropping into place under spring tension. Now we can unfold the lower armor plate. At this point, you could build up some fortifications. We see this being done historically with sandbags, logs, and really anything else the team can get their hands on. Now we can throw on some camouflage. Now we're ready to take our fighting positions. We'll have Matthew as loader, loading an armor-piercing round. Finn will be commander, scanning for targets. And I'll take the gunner's controls. And now, we're ready to ambush some tanks. This is of course the simplified version, and doesn't take into account weather, terrain, crew proficiency, and any other number of variables that we can't really replicate indoors here. But, with any luck, that gives you a pretty decent idea of what goes into setting up a gun like this. And that just about wraps things up. I really hope you enjoyed the video and maybe even learned a little something new. If so, please consider leaving us a like and maybe even subscribing, as it really does help us out a lot. In the meantime, my name's Andrew with the American Heritage Museum. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.